I want you to take a second and just imagine something for me.
Okay.
Think about the last time you walked into a room that was just entirely deeply overwhelmed.
Oh, I know the exact kind of space you mean.
Right, like boxes stacked high against the wall, those ambiguous, maybe I'll need this piles covering every flat surface, drawers that stubbornly refuse to close all the way.
Because there's just way too much crammed inside.
Exactly. When you stepped into that room, did you feel it? That subtle, almost invisible, but a very heavy pressure in the air?
It's physical. It really is.
Most people glance at that and just categorize it as a mess. But that feeling in your chest, that invisible weight, is actually a quantifiable phenomenon that experts call system drag.
It's a profound physical sensation. You step into a space like that, and you can practically feel your mental bandwidth shrinking in real time. The air literally feels thicker.
Yes.
And your ability to focus suddenly requires this conscious, strenuous effort.
Welcome, listeners, to another My Mind MashUps deep dive where we unravel mysteries, spark curiosity, and make sense of complex ideas together.
So glad to be here for this one.
Every single deep dive we do here is about 3 core things. We're about sparking your curiosity, challenging your long-held assumptions, and expanding your understanding of the world.
And today is a perfect example of that.
Today, we are moving way beyond the surface-level zen of decluttering. We aren't just talking about making a room look pretty for aesthetic reasons or interior design.
Right, no folding hacks today.
We are diving into the hard science of why letting go of things is actually a metabolic requirement.
And to help us map this out, we're pulling from a truly fascinating stack of sources today. We are bridging cutting-edge neuroscience, including some incredible recent studies out of Yale and Princeton with behavioral economics, and even the strict, unyielding laws of thermodynamics.
Thermodynamics, I love it.
We're going to examine exactly how your physical space alters your biological reality down to the cellular level.
It's going to be mind-blowing. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe if you enjoy content that makes you think. All right, let's jump right into the biology of what I like to call the neural tax.
I like that term.
We've all been guilty of thinking of clutter as a neutral background, right? The assumption is usually, well, if you aren't actively looking at the stack of mail on your table, it isn't affecting your cognitive load.
But the research paints a very different picture. Clutter is absolutely not a neutral background.
Not at all.
A 2024 study out of Yale, published in the journal Neuron, beautifully demystifies this. They looked at a phenomenon called visual crowding.
Visual crowding.
Yeah. The researchers looked really closely at the primary visual cortex, specifically the V1 area of your brain. As you probably know, that's your brain's first stop for processing visual information. It detects basic features like edges, contrasts, things like that.
Right.
What they found is that this V1 area has a very finite bandwidth, and it is highly susceptible to interference.
So when your peripheral vision is totally saturated with objects, the internal communication subunits in that V1 area actually degrade in their efficiency.
Yes, it creates a literal biological traffic jam of neurons.
A traffic jam?
The neural pathways are intact, sure, but the signal-to-noise ratio drops significantly.
So even if you are staring straight ahead at your laptop, trying to focus entirely on an email, if there is clutter in your periphery, your brain is actively burning metabolic energy just to suppress that irrelevant visual information.
Which is an incredibly resource-intensive process. Your brain is essentially running a continuous background program to filter out the noise.
It's working overtime.
Exactly. When those receptive fields in your visual cortex overlap, because there are just too many items in your field of view, they start to cancel each other out. Your brain has to work twice as hard to maintain your focal point.
I always think of this like a computer browser.
Well, that's a great metaphor.
Your brain has a strict limit on its cognitive RAM, your active working memory. Research generally estimates we can hold about 4 chunks of information in our active working memory at any given time.
Just 4.
Just 4. That is your entire bandwidth for active processing. So every physical object in your peripheral vision that requires an unresolved decision that functions as a ghost tab running in the background of your mental browser.
That stack of bills.
Yep.
The broken blender you keep meaning to fix. The clothes sitting in a pile waiting to be donated. They're all tiny, unresolved intention cues, and they require continuous background computation.
So when a massive percentage of your cognitive RAM is occupied by the background noise of your messy room, your brain naturally lags.
It has to.
You are attempting to run a high-performance creative life on a processor that is entirely bogged down by these ghost tabs, And reading through these studies, it becomes so clear that this cognitive lag translates directly into physiological stress.
It does. The constant background computation triggers a systemic stress response. There was this brilliant field study of 30 dual-income families where spouses gave recorded audio tours of their homes.
I read this one. It's fascinating.
Right. Researchers analyzed the specific language they used to describe their spaces and then tracked their cortisol levels, the body's primary stress hormone, over the course of several days.
And the data from that study is striking. The spouses who used what researchers categorized as stressful home language, so words describing clutter, unfinished repairs, disorganized spaces, they actually showed flatter diurnal cortisol slopes.
Yes.
Seeing that flat diurnal cortisol slope in the data really proves this is chronic stress. It's not just mild annoyance.
Precisely. Because in a healthy stress response system, cortisol spikes in the morning to provide energy and alertness.
To wake you up.
Exactly. And then it steadily drops throughout the day, allowing for restorative sleep at night. A flat slope indicates that natural restorative rhythm is completely broken.
So the mess was literally altering their stress physiology. It was keeping their nervous systems locked in a state of chronic fatigue.
They're waking up exhausted and going to sleep wired.
Man, that physical exhaustion you're talking about, I always assumed that was just from the physical labor of lifting boxes or scrubbing floors.
Most people do.
But reading through the physics papers in our source stack today, I realized there's a measurable heat cost to simply making the decision to let something go.
Yes. This brings us into the realm of information theory and thermodynamics, specifically Landauer's principle.
This is where it gets really wild.
Rolf Landauer, he was a physicist at IBM, and he proved that erasing information is not computationally or physically free.
Wait, literally not free? Like in physics?
In physics.
Mm-hmm.
To reset a bit of information, to take a system from a state of 1 to 0, there's a minimum physical heat cost. You must dissipate heat to reset the system to a blank state.
So when you decide to let go of an object, you are updating the informational state of your environment and your brain. You are dissipating heat. You are expending actual measurable metabolic energy to break a neural loop and reset your system's state.
You are actively fighting entropy.
And if we look at the second law of thermodynamics alongside Shannon entropy, the sheer scale of this becomes clear, because the universe naturally moves toward disorder.
The natural state of everything is to become more disorganized over time, unless energy is applied to maintain order. In information theory, Shannon entropy measures the amount of uncertainty or surprise in a system.
Okay.
The more objects, potential configurations, and unresolved tasks you have in a space, the higher the Shannon entropy.
Which means your brain has to spend exponentially more energy to extract any useful signal from all that noise.
Exactly.
If you hold on to everything, refusing to let go of past identities, old clothes, outdated files, you function more like a closed system.
And in thermodynamics, a closed system that doesn't exchange energy or matter with its environment eventually reaches maximum entropy. It stagnates.
It reaches heat death.
Right. Nothing new can be introduced because there is no capacity left to process it.
That is a profound way to understand human environments. To remain highly functional, adaptive, and complex, you cannot operate as a closed system. You must function as an open system.
And the defining characteristic of a successful open system is that it continuously exports entropy. It takes in high-quality energy, utilizes it, and offloads the degraded energy and waste.
You have to exhale the waste of the past to make room for the energy of the future.
Beautifully put.
The biological and physical cost of maintaining all those old high-entropy configurations is the exact mechanism that prevents you from utilizing your energy for new creative endeavors.
If you don't export that entropy, you are simply managing decay rather than fostering growth.
If this is resonating, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next deep dive. Looking at how letting go is a physical and metabolic requirement naturally leads us to how some of history's most focused minds handled their environment.
Oh, this is one of my favorite parts of the research.
They didn't just tidy up their desks. They actively engineered what we might call the void. They treated solitude and empty space as highly calibrated tools for cognition.
The consistency of this pattern across vastly different disciplines is honestly remarkable. These individuals understood intuitively the principles of cognitive load and entropy long before we had the neuroimaging to prove it.
Nikola Tesla is a prime example. The man was a visionary, but his methods were often viewed as eccentric. He would deliberately retreat into completely dark, empty rooms.
Right.
He wasn't just resting. By stripping away every single piece of external visual and auditory stimuli, He was freeing up 100% of his cognitive RAM.
He wasn't spending any subunit computations in his V1 Cortex, ignoring a messy room or background noise.
Exactly. He used that reclaimed metabolic energy to simulate complex three-dimensional electrical models in his mind.
He could run a mental prototype of an alternating current motor for weeks, checking for wear and tear on specific parts, all within his imagination.
That is wild.
He essentially treated an empty room like it was a piece of advanced laboratory equipment designed to maximize his internal processing power.
And we see the exact same principle applied in martial arts strategy. Miyamoto Musashi, the legendary 17th century samurai. He wrote the Book of Five Rings, and the ultimate chapter of that text is the Book of the Void.
Yes.
Musashi taught that nothingness, or the void, is not an absence or a lack of things. It is the presence of pure potential.
It is about achieving a state of absolute strategic awareness. When your mind is unclouded by attachments, clutter, or preconceived notions, you reach a state of cognitive flexibility.
You can perceive every option and threat clearly because you aren't expending energy maintaining artificial structures in your mind.
And you see this pattern of deliberate purging everywhere in history.
Yeah.
Isaac Newton retreated from Cambridge during the plague, stripped away his social obligations, and had his year of miracles developing calculus and the theory of gravity.
Henry David Thoreau went to Walden Pond specifically to strip away the non-essentials of life. They were all chasing this void.
Creating that void, whether that means clearing a physical shelf, emptying your calendar for a weekend, or sitting in a sensory-deprived room like Tesla, it creates a physical and cognitive gradient.
A gradient. Let's talk about that.
That gradient acts as a pressure differential. You've heard the phrase, nature abhors a vacuum.
Right.
When you create empty space, you aren't just leaving a blank spot. You're creating a flow state that allows new, higher-grade information, new relationships, and new opportunities to enter your life.
But as long as the space is clogged with low-value, high-entropy items, that flow is entirely blocked.
The pressure differential is key. Without it, there is no movement.
But this brings up the most challenging aspect of this entire topic.
Oh, the psychological friction.
Exactly. If the science is this clear, if clutter drains our brain power, spikes our cortisol, and prevents us from reaching our potential, why is it so incredibly difficult to throw things away?
It is the universal struggle.
I mean, I will find myself staring at a specific proprietary charging cable from 2008 for a device I know I threw away a decade ago, and I will still think, but I might need it.
We all do it.
That isn't rational behavior.
It isn't rational at all.
Yeah.
It stems from a deeply ingrained cognitive glitch known as the endowment effect. Behavioral economists have demonstrated repeatedly that humans irrationally value things we already own at significantly more than their actual market worth.
The classic experiments on this are fascinating.
The mug experiment, right?
Yes. Researchers give someone a standard, inexpensive coffee mug and then immediately ask them to sell it back. The participants consistently demand a price far higher than they would have ever paid to buy that exact same mug moments earlier.
And that behavior is rooted in loss aversion. Evolutionarily, the psychological pain of losing a resource is felt roughly twice as intensely as the pleasure of gaining an equivalent resource. Wow. Our brains are wired to protect what we have, even if what we have is no longer serving us.
So we look at a box of old college papers or a broken chair, and our ego attaches to that material to feel a sense of permanence. We treat giving away a useless item like we are losing a piece of our own identity.
When I saw the neuroimaging data pointing to the insula, it just clicked for me. That's the brain's pain center.
The insula.
Yeah. When participants in these studies even contemplated giving an item away, functional MRI scans showed significant activation in the insula.
So we are experiencing genuine physiological distress when deciding to throw away a mug or an old cable. The brain doesn't differentiate between a useless object and a vital piece of our identity.
It really doesn't.
And this cognitive trap is heavily compounded by the IKEA effect.
Yes, the IKEA effect explains our tendency to overvalue things simply because we put emotional or physical labor into them.
If you spent 3 hours assembling a mediocre bookshelf, you will value it more highly than a superior bookshelf you simply purchased.
We attach our own expended energy to the object, making it even harder to part with.
Which raises a crucial point about how we design our lives, particularly as we age. If we let this endowment effect and loss aversion dictate our environments, our living spaces slowly transform into obstacle courses.
That is a highly relevant application of this science. In environmental gerontology, researchers utilize the competence press model to understand this dynamic.
Competence press model. Break that down for us.
This model examines the relationship between a person's internal capabilities, so their motor skills, cognitive function, sensory acuity, and the demands, or the press, of their physical environment.
So a heavily cluttered room has an exceptionally high environmental press.
Exactly. Imagine an older adult trying to navigate a hallway filled with decades of accumulated boxes and furniture. The cognitive and motor energy required just to walk to the kitchen is immense.
It restricts their autonomy.
It dramatically increases the burden on caregivers, too. Their daily energy is entirely consumed by navigating the press of their environment, leaving absolutely nothing for actual living or decision-making.
By reducing those environmental obstacles, you are physically giving the brain more energy for choice. Space is agency.
I love that. Space is agency.
Right-sizing our spaces, ensuring they fit our current physical and cognitive capabilities rather than our past attachments, literally grants us more independent days. It shifts the entire dynamic from crisis management to autonomous living.
And we have to say the transition from physical to digital environments is equally taxing.
Right.
We really can't discuss cognitive load without addressing digital clutter.
Oh, absolutely. The mechanisms are nearly identical, but the scale is often worse.
Much worse.
The infinite scroll on social media, the thousands of unread emails, the constant push notifications, it operates like a bottomless bowl of soup.
Bottomless bowl.
Yeah. In physical spaces, you eventually run out of room or you finish a tangible task and your brain receives a visual cue of completion. In the digital environment, that visual cue never arrives. Your brain just keeps consuming, constantly burning up your cognitive RAM.
The digital landscape is an incredibly high entropy environment. It is meticulously designed by attention engineers to keep your directed attention constantly engaged until you are completely depleted.
It's exhausting.
Your visual cortex is overwhelmed and your executive function is just ground down.
So if we are swimming in high entropy physical and digital environments, how do we fix the cognitive drain?
The scientific antidote, heavily supported by environmental psychology, is found in attention restoration theory, or RT.
All right.
This theory posits that our directed, effortful attention is a highly finite resource that fatigues quickly. To restore it, we need to immerse ourselves in environments that offer soft fascination.
Soft fascination is such a brilliant concept. Unlike a television screen or a busy intersection that demands hard fascination and forces your brain to aggressively process rapid stimuli, soft fascination is low demand.
A prime example, supported by numerous experimental studies, is taking a 40-minute walk in nature.
Just a walk in the woods.
That's it. Natural environments inherently provide soft fascination. Watching leaves rustle in the wind, looking at the patterns of a stream, or just observing clouds. It engages your involuntary attention effortlessly.
It allows your directed attention muscles to unclench. It gives your prefrontal cortex a necessary reprieve from constantly filtering out high entropy noise.
The neurological studies show that a single nature walk enhances neural markers of executive control. It lowers your sympathetic nervous system activation, resets your cortisol levels, and fundamentally restores your ability to focus and make complex decisions.
You are stepping out of a high clutter, high demand environment and allowing your biological system to run its necessary restorative protocols.
Exactly.
Like, comment, and subscribe to hear more My Mind Mashups deep dives, because we are bringing all of these threads together now.
We covered a lot of ground today.
We really did. Think about the ground we've covered today. We've totally expanded our understanding of clutter. It is not a moral failing if your desk is messy, and cleaning it up isn't just an aesthetic choice to make your house look like a magazine cover.
It is a metabolic tax. It is a biological drain on your system that degrades your visual cortex, spikes your stress hormones, and limits your cognitive bandwidth.
Letting go is a physical requirement for a high-performance life. You are an open system. The past, the old objects, the digital hoarding, the unresolved tasks, that is just data you've already processed.
You cannot let it clog your cognitive RAM.
If you want to grow, if you want to remain adaptive and complex, you have to export the entropy. You have to clear the bandwidth.
Which leads us to a final, really vital question to consider as we wrap up today.
Let's hear it.
If we accept the physics here, if we are open systems that must export entropy and waste to survive and maintain our complexity, what if the simple physical act of throwing away a useless object is actually the biological trigger your brain has been waiting for?
Wow, that reframes the entire process.
Think about the mechanics of it. We often sit around waiting for a creative breakthrough, a spark of inspiration, or a sudden burst of motivation to finally change our lives or clean our spaces.
Right, we wait for the feeling first.
But the thermodynamics of the brain suggest the exact opposite sequence. What if the version of you that you've been desperately trying to become is trapped underneath the psychological friction of the things you refuse to shed?
By creating the void, by taking out the trash, you might be sending the exact physical signal your neural pathways need to generate that next great idea. You aren't just taking out the garbage, you are clearing the runway for your own potential.
Beautifully said.
Find My Mind MashUps everywhere you listen. Amazon Music, Audible, Facebook, Pocket Casts, Spotify, TikTok, and YouTube. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Your perspective could shape our next deep dive.